Charles Woods, it's an honor to talk to you. And honestly, if I had an interview that I wanted to do here at CPAC, personally, it was this one because I'm from the hometown, I guess you would say, of your son, Ty. We all know the history of what happened to him. And so first, our condolences. But secondly, I just want to ask you, what do you want his legacy to be?
Well, Ty definitely was an awesome young man, and he was an American hero. But good will come out of his death. And if anything, I'd like people to know that no matter what kind of family you come from, and our family, very imperfect, you can be an American hero in whatever field you choose. And we need more American heroes like Ty.
We definitely do. Probably a lot of, you meet a lot of young men who have a lot to say about your son, Ty. And I'm just curious, of the things that have happened since Ty's death, what is the story that's just your favorite thing that has come out of it that's personal for you?
Afterwards?
Yes.
There have been so many. You know, I live over in Hawaii. I've come out of the surf with my boogie board and had someone come up to me and recognize me even though I look like a drowned rat and say, oh, you know, because they're aware of Ty's story. Probably one of the most touching was once I was on the beach with my wife and with my kids, and this young man comes up to me and he says, how did you know Chief Petty Officer Woods? He actually tracked me down because there was a bumper sticker on the back of my car. He found me and he says, I'm a ranger. I worked with your son in Afghanistan. And we got to know each other quite a bit. He'd come over to our house for dinner. He'd bring his fiancée. We'd go to the same church together. And in fact, we're going to go to his wedding this next summer. And just things like that. It's really been touching. Ty's death was not in vain, and there will be good things that do come out of it. We do know that.
What is resolution for you?
Well, will there ever be complete resolution? Probably when I am allowed the privilege of seeing my son again. And I know that that will happen. I know where Ty is. I just need to make sure that I'm there. And in order for that to happen, I have to forgive everyone that's responsible for his death, both those people in the United States that are responsible, as well as those in Libya. And I have forgiven them.
What's your opinion of what needs to happen on the from a political standpoint?
Well, I try not to be political, just to honor my son. And it's difficult to do that, to bifurcate the two. But the truth needs to come out. That's part of justice. And there needs to be justice as a result of this. And that does not conflict with forgiveness. And eventually the truth will come out. What I would like to see right now would be, when you look at the facts, we really know very little more a year and a half later than we did before, even though there have been at least 5 House committees. And what I would like to see would be John Boehner approve the resolution that's backed by over 180 Republicans in the House of Representatives, that a special committee would be formed. And I think that's really necessary for all the facts to come out.
What would you like us to know about Ty himself when he was a little boy? I know you told me a story about him breaking his surfboard, but what's something that you just hope will hang on in the hearts of Americans about your son that's outside of the Benghazi story? Because of course his life was completely rich and full before that.
Okay, yesterday I was doing an interview with Catherine. And I want to say Hepburn, because she looks so much like Catherine Hepburn, but you know who she is. There we go, okay, on Fox News. And right before we did the interview, she got a phone call from her son, I think he was about 2nd grade, his principal, and said, your son was standing in the lunch line today, and someone was giving him some problems, and he hit him. Oh. and I said, you know, I can tell you are a great parent. It's good for young men, even that young, to be masculine. Get in a few fights when you're young, and then you'll be a peacemaker like Ty was later on in your life. And I told her a story that I hadn't even thought about for such a long time, about Ty doing something similar. Now, when Ty was growing up, he was raised 5 years of age on a 9,000-acre ranch in eastern Oregon. We'd give him a .22. He'd be gone all day shooting ground squirrels. We never worried about him. He was very responsible. But I taught him how to protect himself and how to protect others. And he could, when he was just a little tiny kid, he could throw a punch that felt like you're being kicked by a horse. And I took him to a church camp where he was there for a week, and I'd always taught him, I says, never start a fight. If someone attacks you, walk away, or at least try and walk away from it. But never, you know, do this unless you're protecting someone else. So after he was there at this church camp for a week, he comes running up to me and he says, Dad, there's something I have to tell you before someone else does. And he says, there was this big kid that was picking on this little kid, and I told him to stop and not do it. He didn't. I dropped him with one punch. And that was really the essence of who Ty was. He was a protector of people who couldn't defend himself. And when I heard that Ty had disobeyed the order to stand down twice, and I've confirmed this with the reporter who was on the ground that interviewed someone who was with Ty, who was one of his friends that was there. He was definitely told to stand down twice. That was who Ty was. He was going to go rescue his friends, 30-some of them, even though he knew that he was jeopardizing his career, and even though he knew that if they weren't going to save those people, there was going to be no effort to rescue him as well. And he was willing to jeopardize his life and his career in order to protect people who needed to be protected. And he did that to his very last drop of blood.
And you mentioned that, and that's something that hasn't been prevalent, at least out of most news circuits. And I just wanted to ask you this. What are the other things about the Benghazi incident specifically that you want to make sure Americans understand?
Well, Ty loved America, and somehow I feel that this possibly could be a turning point in American history. Obviously, our country has been changed, but not for the better, and we are headed the wrong direction. Hopefully, Ty's death will be one of those things that turns our country back to being the country that honors our Constitution and honors God and honors service people like Ty, who for the last 200 years have laid down their life for the greatest country on earth.
Very well said. Now, do you, as you're looking down the path, and I don't know about you, but I don't feel very strongly that this administration is going to give us any sort of real resolution on Benghazi. We can pray, but I don't feel like it is. Comment on that, and then tell me, what do you think needs to happen for the proper follow-up of Benghazi, and who do you think is willing to do that?
Okay, eventually the truth will come out. The truth always does come out, and the sooner it comes out, the better it is for everyone. Right now, I would say that the best tool for the truth to come out would be for John Boehner to approve that select committee. He's the only one that's preventing it from happening right now.
Have you talked to him?
Yes, last spring I went to his office twice, and most offices of congressmen and senators, they will take me in and they will visit with me. I tried to twice. He would send out, or someone else from his office staff, and I could tell by talking to that office staff person that he was not interested in talking with me. And quite frankly, I think he's about the only congressman or senator that that's ever happened with.
Have you met with the president?
Yes, I did. When the bodies were brought back at Andrews Air Force Base, and this was the day after I found out about his death, I had the privilege of meeting with our president.
And did he make any promises to you?
Well, it was very brief. He came up to me and the other family members, and each one of us he talked to, and he reached out, shook my hand, and said, I'm sorry. It did not seem to be a very sincere apology. You and I have both met powerful people, and usually those people have what you'd call the it factor. I didn't see it in him at all. And you and I are looking face to face as we're having this conversation. We looked face to face, but he couldn't look me in the eye. He was looking over my shoulder as he whimpered in a very whining voice, I'm sorry. And I could tell that, unfortunately, I did not believe him.
To the rest of the world, your son is a hero. To you, I'm sure he's a hero too, but to you, he's your child. How do you move on? What's your strength?
Well, it's God's grace. My view of reality, and I don't try and push it on anyone else, is that not one sparrow falls to the ground outside of God's will, not outside of his knowledge. God knew ahead of time, Psalms 139, what day Ty was going to be born, and that he knew what time Ty was going to be going home. So you and I have both been in car wrecks and accidents where we know that we shouldn't have walked away from them. But someone's hand was upon us. Hundreds of times Ty has been in worse situations than this, but it wasn't his time. And so I just have to accept that God, out of his love and out of his wisdom, he could have prevented that mortar from coming down, but that mortar passed through his loving hands. And I don't know the reason, but I do know the good will come out of Ty's death.
Thank you so much for your time, Charles Woods.
It's been